It's Egypt's third presidential election since the revolution that changed the country's political landscape in 2011. The first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi, was toppled in a coup in 2013. Since then, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Egypt's current president, has outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood. Does the Muslim Brotherhood have any stake in these elections? I'm Ahmed al-Burai, and we're speaking to Dr. Darrag, Egypt's former Minister of Planning and International Cooperation in Morsi's government.
It was very clear that it was a bloody military coup in order to take power.
The United States strongly condemns today's violence and bloodshed across Egypt.
Mohamed Morsi, yes, he is the legitimate president of Egypt. The message was very clear from Sisi. I'm not allowing any kind of credible elections. Is this kind of election that any patriotic person would like to participate in? Nobody was ready or was even expecting the revolution to take place. Democracy needs time for people to appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Amr, for talking to TRT World. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Let me start with asking you about your stances as an opposition, as the Muslim Brotherhood. People are asking, why don't you become more pragmatic, more realistic, and go to the pending election in Egypt right now? If you do believe in political transition and in peaceful change, why don't you go and encourage even your base to go and participate in the coming election?
Well, actually, the real question is Sisi really willing and would be accepting any kind of change of that sort? And the question is not related just to the Brotherhood or even the opposition from outside the regime. Even people from inside, from within the regime, tried and had a shot on that. General Shafir, General Anan, Hisham Jinina, and all these people were actually deprived from the basic right of getting into the election. And everybody knows the harsh measures that were taken against them. And the message was very clear from Sisi. I'm not allowing any kind of credible elections. And he even brought one of his supporters to compete against him. And the guy is saying that my program is supporting Sisi. Okay, so is this kind of election that any patriotic person would like to participate in? This is the real question. As a matter of fact, when there was a real potential for candidates like Anan, for example, who actually announced that he is running, I don't think there was a big objection either from the Brotherhood or the general opposition to, at a certain point, to cooperate or to even positively endorse such move because that would constitute some sort of a change anyway.
So it's not because you still believe that Mohamed Morsi is the legitimate president of Egypt. Do you still believe that Morsi is the president?
Okay. There are two different issues. Mohamed Morsi, yes, he is the legitimate president of Egypt. He was elected. Everybody in the world acknowledged, even Sisi himself acknowledged that this election was fair, and Morsi was the true president in Egypt. And he was ousted by a military coup. So nobody can dispute this. However, if the scene is closed, totally closed, and there is an opening, even if it's small opening, even if nobody really believed that even if Hanan or Shafiq or anybody ran, the regime would allow them to really compete and have an opportunity of winning, still that was a sign to show that people are willing even to accept that just to get rid of the regime that is actually ruining everything in Egypt right now.
Do you think the Muslim Brotherhood or the opposition are willing or ready to abandon the idea of Mohamed Morsi being the president so that things can go back to normality, they can have more, like political freedom in Egypt? Or do you still believe that Morsi should go back and become the president of Egypt?
Well, it doesn't really matter what I think, but what reality is that he is a president. He was elected, and the people who elected him, did not freely and willingly elected anybody else. Okay. Now, if we talk about reality, Dr. Morsi is in jail, and first of all, he has to come out of jail in order to go ahead with the scenario of bringing him back to office. Okay. He will never get out of jail as long as Sisi is in power. So we have to set the circumstances that will allow real change again in Egypt, democracy back. And I don't think that Dr. Morsi will insist at that time to continue and finish his term.
Do you think this is like a realistic vision? Like Morsi is coming back, Sisi is toppled. Morsi has been in prison for more than 4 years now, and the world had done nothing for him, except some shy moves from the British MPs now. They're asking for a visit because of health deterioration of Morsi. Do you think this is more like realistic, pragmatic, to still speaking about a possible change? Or how do you see the change of General Sisi?
First of all, we have to acknowledge that the international community supporting the coup, this is what is wrong, okay? Dr. Morsi being in jail is not the wrong person to question. And when the world talks about democracy, it talks about free election, and still deals with Sisi, who is pushing everybody out, who is forging election, who is doing a lot of harm actually to the country, and they are still supporting him. They are to be asked. Actually, the courageous steps of some of the parliamentarians, like the ones you refer to in the British Parliament, wanting to come out to go to Egypt in order to make sure that he is all right, and it's not appropriate that a former president or a current president or whatever, however you want to call him, is being treated this way. He hasn't seen his family for 4 years except twice. This is not compatible with even the normal standards of the world. Whether he coming back to power is realistic or not. So what is realistic actually? If you keep on accepting military coups as a way of change, and you call this pragmatic and realistic, but this is a different kind of world.
But still, it seems that you're not willing to remember or to understand that the year of Morsi was a big failure. It ended up with general strikes, with power cuts, shortages of fuel. So, and it seems like he was willing to be the one-man rule, where he was depriving the judges from any right to challenge his decisions. And it was like a general perception that he's working for his own group only. Don't you think so?
Well, first, here I'm not going to try to defend Dr. Morsi. Most of what you said actually was kind of setup in order to show him as failure. For example, the shortage of fuel you refer to. The next day, Dr. Morsi was ousted. Fuel was back in every station. Nobody was complaining about that.
But he knew about that before he ran to the election. So why didn't you refrain from running to the election, give more chances to other people, like what Abul Futuh did? Why didn't you let them go and run for the election?
Nobody is depriving anybody from running. I mean, Dr. Futuh actually ran, and that was the choice of the people. Nobody brought the people and enforced them to have a selection. Dr. Futuh ran, and he got a decent amount of votes. Hamdin Sabbahi got a decent amount of votes. Even Shafiq got a decent amount of votes. But at the end of the day, Dr. Morsi won, and this is democracy. You cannot say for somebody who was trusted by the people, step aside and let the others win. Even if you assume that Dr. Morsi made mistakes, and he definitely did make mistakes, and the government made mistakes, nobody is free from doing this. However, if you look at President Trump, for example, would the world acknowledge that the American military, because Trump is doing mistakes all the time, to take over power and oust him and bring somebody else? That would be the end of the world in the United States. The same thing is happening everywhere, and normally when a president, particularly during the first year of his presidency, his popularity goes down, he makes mistake, and even ultimately, if he's not acceptable, if his performance is not acceptable to people, they would be willing to change him after 4 years, or even with early presidential elections. But this is not what happened. Even when the coup took place, they said that the agenda was to enforce early elections. Nothing like this happened. It was very clear that it was a clear military coup, a bloody military coup, in order to take power. And look what is happening right now. Actually, it was not Dr. Morsi. If Abdel Fattah was a president, the same thing happened to him. Abdel Fattah himself was arrested last month, just for speaking out against the practice of Sisi as an opposition leader. So this is not related to Dr. Morsi. It's very clear that that was directed to the democratic practice in Egypt.
The Muslim Brotherhood was, to some extent, naive in terms of politics. They didn't expect that while everybody was speaking about it. Even Morsi didn't take any kind of solid measures on the ground to prevent the coup from happening.
You talk about the coup.
Yeah, the coup attempt, like on the 30th of June, the people took to the street. It was clear that a coup is happening, while the Muslim Brotherhood were speaking about everything is under control. Don't you think that this is a kind of immaturity in terms of politics? How the people were going to give you trust once again?
Well, I'm not asking people to give us trust once again. I mean, this is up to the people to trust whoever they trust. But actually, demonstrations, even large demonstrations in the streets, does not necessarily mean that a coup is about to take place. And actually, the demonstrations were talking about having early elections, which, in a way, was acceptable to the president, provided that the parliamentary elections are completed. So this doesn't mean that the military will take over, making use of these demonstrations and announcing a kind of a military rule. How to handle this, as I said, in my personal opinion, that was, at that time, it was too late. The deep state was penetrating everything. They had the media, they had the judiciary, they had, of course, the military, they had the security forces, a lot of the business people, supported by strong support from regional forces like Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, and probably the idea of the coup was kind of passed and set aside by major powers like the United States. So this, at that point, it was impossible to stop it. In order to face that, actually, work should have started very early, right after Mubarak was ousted. What should have happened then was that the politicians gather and establish a leadership for the transitional period and not give this away to the military. This is the major mistake.
So do you think who supported the coup attempt and who is supporting Sisi right now to stay in power? International players. Do you think that there were any players in the international arena who were willing to see Morsi toppled? And even in the regional countries, some people were not happy with the Muslim Brotherhood in power. Do you think so?
A lot of people were not happy not just about the Brotherhood, but the idea of having a free kind of governance coming through the will of the people, which has resulted from the Arab Spring phenomenon. So
forces they're happy with what's happening in Tunisia. It's unfair to say that. It's
do you think that the Emirates, for example, is happy with what's going on in Tunisia?
You don't think so?
It's not just I'm thinking. There are all sorts of conspiracies that are reported about the Tunisians intervening in the politics in Tunisia.
Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, they are, as I said, they have a project, and they have plans that are in total contradiction with the change that is aspired by the Arab Spring. So they are supporting any kind of power in the region that is resulting from the Arab Spring. In some countries, it turned into a sort of a civil war. In Egypt, it was a military coup. Even in Tunisia, regardless of what they did, they came up with a formula that actually allowed the old regime to be very powerful, still in power, and yet this is not very acceptable to the forces that actually supported the coup in Egypt. So the idea is not just the Brotherhood or Islamists or what's called political Islam. Yes, of course, this is a main element, a main driving force, but the whole idea of change, the whole idea of the Arab Spring is totally rejected. And this is not just related actually to regional powers. It's in a way related also to some international powers who are interested to keep controlling the area
Like whom?
The major powers, the United States, Europe.
What do you think about the idea that this region in the Middle East is not ready, is not mature enough for democracy? Do you agree with that?
Of course I don't, because if that was the case, the Arab Spring would have not erupted, you know. Actually, when the Arab Spring erupted in the area back in 2011, that was looked at as a model actually for everybody in the world. I remember during the 18 days, I remember I saw a British politician on TV who was talking to his supporters, and he was saying that it is enough, it's time now to desert the British values and go to the Egyptian values. He was saying that back in January 2011. This means that there is a big aspiration.
I want to go back to the regional power or the international powers that helped in toppling Mohammed Morsi. Do you still think that it's only the UAE, you said, the United States? What about Israel? Do you think that Mohammed Morsi, in terms of the foreign policies, was good in terms of, you know, like sending guaranteeing messages to the Israeli side, to Iran on the other side, to the Saudi Arabia? So do you think he was successful, or he was just provoking all these powers by the policies he's following?
At least during the first 6 months of his presidency, people were, you know, there were clear statements about, you know, liking what he was doing. Remember, for example, when there was a war launched against Gaza in, I think, November 2012, and in very few days, Egypt had a major role under the leadership of Dr. Morsi to stop this war. Dr. Morsi sent his prime minister, and they were very abrupt in ending this down. And President Obama at that time was very happy. Actually, it was to the extent that people were accusing the administration of Obama and Hillary Clinton that they are supporting the Brotherhood. So of course they were not. They were just content with the practice. I don't think there was anything that was intimidating to the world.
They gave you the chance. Do you deny that? The Obama administration were happy with the Muslim Brotherhood coming to power, but then you failed them.
No. Actually, either the Brotherhood or any political force in Egypt are not responsible in front of the United States. What I'm saying is that it is not a matter of failure in foreign policy practice, for example. It's actually a matter of principle. Maybe there was a viewpoint in the Obama administration that, okay, if we are calling for democracy, and this is what democracy brought, let's try to bear with it and deal with it, and maybe help make it eventually fail and changed by democratic means, which was actually fine. I mean, this is the democratic practice everywhere. But I'm sure that there were voices in the United States that were against that, and they were trying to do everything they want to oust Morsi. However, the main driving power behind the coup definitely came from the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. I don't believe that the United States was part of that conspiracy. Israel was definitely everywhere behind the scene. You cannot separate Israel from this.
After an inspiring revolution in 2011, Mohammed Morsi was elected as the first democratically elected president in Egypt in 2013, then toppled with a coup. Is this what the people of Egypt took to the street in 2011 to get?
Definitely not.
Who to accuse? Who to blame here?
Everybody is to blame. I'm not excusing anybody from the blame. But again, this is people's learn. People need time to learn. And as I was referring to the French Revolution, it took tens of years until their democracy and their past stabilized. Of course, times change now. We don't really need tens of years to do that, but we need a number of years. You don't expect certain people after living in total dictatorship for 70 years, all of a sudden to be able and to have the experience and to have the capacity in order to preserve their democracy just like that. They will have to suffer. They will have to fight back, and that is why actually they cherish it. All stable democracies now, they actually didn't come to what they are right now easily. It took them a lot of suffering, a lot of hardship, so they cherish it very much. In Egypt, the experience was very new, And actually, Dr. Morsi was there for almost a year. And even before that, it was just 1 year also after the revolution. So, and there are so many things, so many bad things that were in the country because of the dictator regime of Hosni Mubarak and even the regimes before that. So a lot of things needed to be fixed. In Turkey, they worked for like 15 years to transform Turkey to where it is right now, and yet there was a coup attempt. But again, people, because they enjoyed the achievements, they could have resisted. They stood up and resisted that.
Do you think that you're offering the people a genuine alternative so people can trust you again? Or still, if you look at the whole region, we're still in turmoil. If you look at Syria, Yemen, Libya, wherever you go, it's already tumultuous, already in turbulent. So why don't you go for stability and go ahead with what's on the ground and start to participate once again instead of being just resisting change? It's already gone.
As I said in the beginning, a lot of people were willing to participate in the elections if there were really serious elections. And even if people were running from the regime itself. Actually, during the 2011 revolution, two of the main candidates were actually part of the reasons why the revolutions erupted, Shafiq and Anan. And yet, because they sensed some credibility compared to Sisi, people, they were willing to interact, and try to find an opening in this situation. But the regime is resisting all this. And I disagree with you when you say that the coup succeeded. This is not considered a success. When you govern your country with fire, with tanks, with military rule everywhere, this is not considered a success. You succeed when you satisfy people and you do your role and people are happy with you, then this is a success. But if you control the country and make the country as if it's a military camp, this is not success. And this is bound to fall.
Do you think that you have something to offer? And what is it? Why the people do not trust the Muslim Brotherhood or the Islamists in general, the opposition in general? They failed to offer any option to the people.
Yes. This is the people are really maybe not 100% right, but they have a good reason to do that. And they're deep inside, they thought that the politicians who were there at that time should have been able to preserve the revolution and satisfy their needs. Yes, true. But don't forget that most of the elite and the political powers who are there right now, people in the 50s, 60s of their ages, they actually were raised during the time of the dictatorship, during Mubarak's time. And I personally believe that this type of elite is not capable of responding to the real aspirations of people after a revolution like that. We have to really look to younger ages. We have to allow new generations to be empowered to take its opportunity. And I believe this is what's going to happen. What I'm saying is that there need to be a new class of politicians who are able, leaders of the social movement, who are able to really lead some sort of a civil movement with new tools in order to peacefully really force the regime to reconsider what it's doing.
Knowing what you know now and looking back like 5 years, what would you have done differently? What would you think that was a major misstep that you've done and now you would have done it differently?
The major misstep that I mentioned earlier was that the politicians and the revolutionary forces in Egypt at that time, they shouldn't have been just satisfied with ousting Mubarak. And they should have developed a mechanism taking charge of the transitional period, not accepting for the military to take full charge of that. Maybe they could have had one representative of the military or whatever, they could have been represented, but actually they just gave it up. And it was driven totally by the military, and they had all the time they need to set the transitional period through a certain course leading to them controlling. And actually they have they didn't start with this military coup. And I can give you at least 6 or 7 coup attempts, but in different ways, meaning that they would have taken charge of the governance in Egypt even before Dr. Morsi was elected. You know, through different steps, because they had the power and they had the time they needed. If we, I mean, as Egyptians, if we insisted at that time to have civilian representation that is capable of really taking charge of the transitional period, that would have been the right thing to do. However, the problem, again, as I said, because people were kind of not ready for that revolution, people were not really educated on how transitional periods are managed, so they were very satisfied with seeing Mubarak go, which was a very large objective. But they didn't really have the capacity and the capability of taking charge of the transitional period.
Thank you, Dr. Amr, for sparing the time to talking to TRT World.
Thank you very much. Thank you.